profession where the trademark of success is defined by our latest accomplishment. Our guest has reached the pinnacle with titles as Coach of the Year, Super Bowl champion, Hall of Fame coach. But as you listen and hear his heart, these accomplishments are just a mere shadow of who he is as a coach and a man. His story is about hard work, determination, humility, gratefulness, transparency and vulnerability, loyalty, and most importantly, Coach V is a mentor, a motivator, and a leader of men. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host, and alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher. Today, we welcome Coach Vermeil as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Coach.
Hey, nice to be with you. Yeah, that was a flattering introduction. It's not all true, but thank you.
Well, I think it is, Coach. I think it is. But Coach, we just wanted to start back when you were a young man growing up in a Vermeil home and ask if you could share a little bit about your mom and dad and siblings and, how did growing up in a Vermeil home help influence who you became?
Well, I think it's the foundation of everything I've ever been or accomplished, really. We all need a foundation. And our problems in our country today, a lot of kids are raised without a foundation.
Mm.
Our home was on a lot. My dad made his living on in a garage right behind the house. Okay, so
Yeah.
it was his grandfather's barn. He turned into a garage, and my sister was the firstborn. She's now 91, and I'm second at going on 88. My brother had just passed it this past few months ago. Stan. 11 months younger. Then I have a younger brother, 9 years younger, Al Vermeil. But, we often talk about this, Ken. We often say, I wonder why we as a family have never had an argument. But what did our parents do to install in 4 kids that have never had a disagreement to this day?
Wow.
And I gave you at my brother-in-law's funeral, and we talked about it. We're organizing a celebration of life for my brother that passed, and we've talked about it again. It's always a topic we discuss. But I think what they gave us is tremendous structure, quality people, hard work. My dad taught me what hard work was all about. He'd get up in the morning and walk about 2 first downs, and he'd be in the garage, and go to work. He'd come in at night at 5:30, 6 o'clock, eat, and go back out and go to work. Okay, and then he'd work all day Saturdays, and many times he'd work all day Sundays because cars break down when they want to break down. And when you're one of 2 garages in a little community of 1,800 people, you had a lot of people to service. Plus, he had 3A and national automobile towing services. So anyway, I think that structure, there was always discipline. My dad was tough-minded guy. It didn't take him very long to describe why he was mad at you and what you did wrong and what he thought you ought to do right. And, we always had definition. And there was always a little air of fear. Like my mother said, I'll call your father. When she said that, he was only a loud voice away. So I think plus living in a town, Ken, with 1,800 people. My graduating class had 29 kids in it. Okay. And all their fathers were like second fathers. You couldn't get away with anything anywhere in town because everybody's dad assumed responsibility for your conduct when you were away from your own home,
Right.
So I would say there was always structure for our lives and always standards for us to meet and always great expectations, and I think that helped hold me. My dad taught me that hard work was not a form of punishment. It's the way you make a living. It's the way you accomplish things. It's the way you overcome adversity. You go back to work.
Right.
And, that helped me all my career. And Ken, as you know, in coaching, there's a lot of bright people.
Yes.
And I never wanted to put myself in a position that I have to outsmart somebody. But I always thought I could outwork them because of this foundation, And I could remember many times getting up with my dad in the middle of the night and going a towing accident. You have to get in the tow car and ride with him at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I thought that was severe punishment. But it really, it added a depth of value to my understanding what you have to do what you're doing well. You have to invest everything you have in it, and treat people properly. My dad was probably the most honest man I've ever met in my life, and he could care less about a dollar. It's amazing. One time I walked in the garage, Ken. You got me started. I was coaching Hillsdale High School. This is night in the early 60s, and he shows me the automobile book. I forget what it's called. Anyway, he says, "Look at this. We're supposed to charge $27.50 an hour. No man's worth $27.50 an hour." I have never forgotten that. But all these things, it hangs to you. Here I am at 87 years old. I still think about those things.
Coach, was there
maybe same.
Was there a memorable conversation that you had with your dad that sticks out and that you carry to this day?
Yeah, the importance of not lying.
Okay.
Telling the truth. One time, my parents went away for just a day, and I snuck out in one of the cars. I was about 13 years old. I could drive, but I'm not supposed to. And I accidentally ran another car off the road out in those little narrow Napa Valley roads. And of course, my dad gets home. He's called in the tow car to tow the car in. And the man describes the car that ran him off the road.
Uh-oh.
Well, hell, that's the car that was in our yard. So when my dad asked me about it, I said, "No, it wasn't me. I didn't do it." So later that night, we're sitting at the dinner table, and a family discussion starts, and he's at the other end of the table. He said, "Dick, are you sure you didn't lie to me?" In his own terminology, And I kept thinking about it. He could tell I lied to him. I could feel that I lied to him. So I admitted it. He says, "Well, now you've learned a lesson. Don't ever tell a lie. Even if it's against you, you always tell the truth." And I have never forgotten that.
Wow.
And he didn't punish me. He almost congratulated me for telling him the truth. Then they took the car that I caused the wreck and put it in the garage and fixed it. It took them about 4 or 5 days of free labor and work to fix it. So I learned the valuable lesson.
Awesome. And they got the point across, like you said. It's just, and it was a different way of approaching it. Wow.
Right. Mm-hmm. I expected to get severely punished and all that, but once I admitted the truth and told the truth, then it was a reward that I did it. That I did tell the truth, not a punishment for having lied in the first place.
Wow.
That's a great lesson that could be applied today. That's for sure.
No question. Yeah.
So, Coach, tell us a little bit about your playing career. Tell us maybe when you got into high school, maybe the sports that you played, and maybe some of the passions and dreams and heroes that you had growing up.
Well, in our high school, with 130 kids in the school, to have teams, all the boys participated in all the sports. I played high school football, basketball, baseball, and track at the same time. Played baseball and then ran track days, and they never had the track meets the same day you had a basketball game, a baseball game. So you had to just to have teams. But football was a sport I loved. My dad loved football, and he always told us as kids because he loved his high school football experience, and he always said you could live your life on the principles you learned playing football.
Yes,
like doing your job, respect the responsibility, how valuable the man next to you is, and all these different things. He always said that. In fact, just recently, a friend of mine came across some old pictures of the Calistoga football men's semi-pro team that my dad organized. Old leather helmets. I got about 4 or 5 pictures from him within the last month.
Oh, wow.
But he loved football. We never really had a good football coach until my senior year. My senior year, football coach, just graduating from then College of Pacific, was with Eddie LeBaron and all that group. His name was Bill Wood. And he came there and coached, and boy, it turned a lousy football team into we lost the championship game 14-7 in a rainstorm in St. Helena. And still people ask me, what was the most devastating loss you ever experienced? I said, we got beat by St. Helena in 1954. He was the first one that told me, young man, you could play college football if you wanted to. No one ever said that to me, and I wasn't planning on going to college. I was going to stay. My dad had the old garage. It was going to Vermeil and Sons garage, and he was involved in auto racing. The amateur type auto racing, very big in it. And I wanted to be a race driver. But when
Really?
all of a sudden this coach said, you could play college football if you wanted to, but academically you're not prepared because you weren't majoring in college prep. He said, go to junior college. So I went to junior college with the idea, number one, just to play football.
Yeah.
And we weren't very good. You didn't have to be very good to play the team because we didn't have many kids. I played there my freshman year, and then I transferred on a half scholarship to College of Pacific. Was there a part of training camp in Jacksonville up there with Dick Bass and those guys, and that actually a little bit before Dick, and I didn't like it, and I was homesick, so I came home, went to junior college again, and then the athletic director at the junior college there had a friend at San Jose State, so he recommended me to San Jose State. So I walked on to San Jose State,
Okay.
and that was 19 years old. And in fact, I got married then. But when we transferred from junior college, I was going on my second semester, my second year. Transferred to San Jose State, got married. Carol went to work at AT&T. She was working for them anyway. And I walked on. I earned a scholarship, and I didn't really get to play until my senior year. About 3 games of the season, I took over the starting role. I wasn't very good, but we weren't very good, so there was room for me to play. But I just loved the game. Became fascinated with the game, and I used to spend a lot more time on the game than other players were. And I could never understand why they didn't take it as seriously as I did. And I remember walking into Gene Mangus's office, our backfield coach at that time, and showing him the diagrams and everything I did with these. And geez, if we did it this way, this would be better and all that kind of stuff. So, I got out, got my master's in secondary degree, and went to Del Mar High School as a head track coach and assistant football coach there for 1 year. I got the contract in there, $5,400 a year. Okay.
Wow.
I was there 1 year. And then my college coach, Dr. Robert Bronzer, was way ahead of his time in coaching, really. Called me and said, there's a gentleman from Hillsdale High School in San Mateo who's going to call you named Frank Collins. Take the job. It's a good high school. It's a modern school, and you're ready to do it. So help me God, I get a call from Frank Collins, asked me if I wanted to be the head football coach at Hillsdale High School.
How old were you at that time again?
About 40.
How old were you again?
Sad to say, about 21 or 2. 22 maybe. Yeah.
Awesome.
22 or 3. Yeah, 1960.
Okay.
1960. So anyway, I took the job at Hillsdale High School and also had to coach swimming. And I learned a lot about working with individuals coaching swimming, In my first year there, I was coach of the year. We only lost 1 game. And the next year we won them all. And the next year we only won 4. And I learned more in losing than I did in winning.
Yes.
And then I was hired to be a backfield coach for College of San Mateo. Doug Scoville, remember that name? Doug
Yes.
Scoville. He had left and went to the Naval Academy as an assistant coach. And so I took his job there. I was 1 season there. And then Napa College offered me the head coaching job at junior college in Napa County, where I was born and raised, where I played. So I went up there for 1 year, and we won 7 games, and I spent a lot of time recruiting, which we would have never done. And on January 28th that year, I know the day because it was our wedding anniversary, and John Ralston called me and offered me the freshman coaching job at Stanford University. Bill Walsh was on the staff at Stanford.
Oh, goodness.
Bill was on the staff at San Jose State as a graduate assistant when I enrolled there and played my first year. So I knew Bill personally. Okay. So anyway, the big thing is, like Wooden said, if you're prepared for your opportunities, then you can be successful. And I was never quite as prepared as I ought to be, but I kept my mouth shut and learned,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Coach, you mentioned a few of these names. My son doesn't know John Ralston, but I know that name. And
Sure do.
Bill Walsh and George Allen and Chuck Knox and all these guys. How did these men impact or influence your career, your philosophy, and leadership style at that point in your life, Coach?
Well, first from my high school football coach, I learned if you say some positive things to kids that don't understand what they have, sometimes it reinforces them to a point that, geez, maybe he's right. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can play college
Wow.
football.
That's so wise.
Right? Yeah, that's just, I'll never forget it. You can play college football. No one ever told me that. And I never thought that way, and I was so green, so naive. You go on and, John Ralston, for example, at Stanford, they've been losing for years because academically, not every kid could get in there. Very
Yeah.
few could get in there that could really play and make a difference.
Yeah.
And John cultivated the leadership of the university, not just the athletic department. He started with the president and the admissions director. We'd play a game on Saturday and he'd have an open house at his home that night, and you'd find the administrations there. And pretty quick, we were getting kids in school that could be competitively successful, but normally wouldn't qualify, but they're really good football players. And what's he do? He wins 2 Rose Bowls in a row. He showed me that everything starts at top and works down into the organization. And John had a great ability. He hired Bill Walsh. He hired Mike White. Both coaches been head coaches in the NFL. Rod Russ, who's been a head coach in the NFL. These kind of guys, Jim Mora, who's been a head coach. We're all on the staff. He could hire the right people. And then he would allow you to coach. Now, he didn't always agree with you, but he would allow you to express yourself, allow you to innovate in your thinking. I remember Bill Walsh. He's coaching the secondary, okay? And go all his blackboards. Remember, we used to use chalk. You remember that?
Yes.
Go all the way around the room, drawing offensive plays for the game plan this week, and he's coaching defense. Okay. And Ralston would be walking behind him because Bill was left-handed, be looking this way, and Ralston's behind him this way, erasing what he was writing. But he couldn't help himself, even though he's coaching the secondary. Think offensively,
Yes.
But, no, John. Then I went with George Allen. George Allen, fanatic in detail. Fanatic in detail. And also respect for age and experience. Respect for age and experience. And I had this discussion the other day with an NFL football coach. Some guys worry too much about these guys that get old if they can't play well. George Allen taught me if older players will work hard to maintain the skills they once had, they can maintain them longer. There's a tendency in the league when they get older to work them less. So they lose the skills they had quicker. And I learned that from George Allen. I had some great success with players who were supposedly too old to play. Now, they bitched at me because I made them work. And I have some interesting stories I've shared on this stuff, I can remember Woody Peoples, old guard from San Francisco 49ers, getting cut, and Mike Giddings, Pro Scout Incorporated, called me, right, when does it get started? This old timer can still play. Here, I'm a George Allen advocate. I bring him to Philadelphia. He lined up, started like 3 or 4 years in a row when he was too old to play and played well, But he had to work. He was a young man to maintain the skills that he once had. I learned that from George Allen, the details. I tell this story, it's the truth. We're landing in Chicago to play the Bears in 1969. We're undefeated. We're a good football team. And before we know, none of the other coaches would sit anywhere close to him because he would ask him questions that was so stimulating that it was hard to answer them. So he says to me before we land, did you check where the sun is at kickoff? He says, no, excuse me, George, I never thought where the sun is. He says, your punter and kickoff returner will be looking into the sun to field footballs to return in Soldiers Field tomorrow. Geez, I never thought of that, Coach. I'll do that. That's why the other next to him, because he would ask them a question he knew damn well they never thought of. That was George Allen. Chuck Knox. Tommy Prothro taught me the value of fundamentals. Unbelievable. Nobody that I've ever been around had a deeper philosophy in fundamentals, knee bending, striking. We spent my quarterbacks at UCLA in 1970 had to hit the Prowler sled. Okay, geez. You believe so much in knee bending. And at the time that I took over the offense in 1970 for Pro Throw. He was out of the technical side of the game. But he controlled the practices, organized them, the fundamentals, the time we spent, and the structure and the discipline. When he walked by a drill, it would be like General MacArthur walking up to you. Every player got nervous, and so did every assistant coach. He goes like this, "Oh, here comes Coach," you know. And I learned a lot from him. The emphasis of fundamentals. I never lost the priority, even in the NFL. Even in the NFL, I watch offensive linemen play today. Oh my, the pro throw would get upset because they don't have the time anymore. It's more scheme and all that. They don't have the time to invest in the fundamentals and the sleds and all those kinds of things today. But Chuck Knox, I learned the value of communication, and you could not misunderstand Chuck Knox. He could say more in fewer words. He's like John Wooden. When I was exposed to John Fuse at UCLA, he could make more sense in fewer words than anybody I've ever been around.
Wow.
And the value of running game, the value of toughness, and the value of being in front of a squad and talking to them. Chuck Knox was dynamic. He should be in the Hall of Fame, okay, long before Dick Vermeil. He takes over 3 losing teams, and he takes all 3 of the teams to the playoffs. Never won a Super Bowl. But they never say what an outstanding job he did to take these 3 losing organizations to playoffs that didn't have the Super Bowl quarterback. He won anyway, won anyway. Those guys are all part, but I learned a lot from assistant coaches as well. Bud Carson worked for me at the Rams. You talk about a structured guy. Well, you could hear a pin drop in his meetings. The minute he walked in the door, everyone shut up as if they all of a sudden couldn't talk anymore. And I only had him a year apart, but he was sick and he couldn't keep going. But those kind of guys really touch you deeply from a philosophical standpoint, and also a technical and scheme standpoint. And I always felt better about coaching things that came to me in my own mind and were enhanced by other people's knowledge. But to take what everybody else believes in and coach was a little tougher for me. Especially, Ken, I left coaching because I was a mess in 1982, and I went into broadcasting for 14 years. And I watched other coaches coach. I always went in, as you know,
Yes.
And I would know your offense and the opponent's offense, and by the time I got there, and study the films and all that. And I learned a lot also, Ken, from sitting in the locker room, talking to players. And I learned how much respect players have for discipline.
Yeah.
I've told this story 100 times. Sitting in an NFL locker room on Saturday before a big game on Sunday, sitting next to a great football player. I won't mention his name. And this guy walks by and he says, "Coach, if I were the head coach of this, I'd have run him out of here years ago." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Discipline? We don't have any discipline problems because we don't have any discipline." You learn these things from people. You learn these things from what you hear. And that made me realize that no matter how old you are, I've coached guys 15 years old. I've coached guys 38 years old. We all need structure.
Yes.
We all need to trust our leadership. We all need to be corrected, not defamed or anything like that, but corrected and accepted. And every once in a while, you got to blow your stack, to let them know. But no, football took me way beyond where I ever anticipated going because people I've been surrounded by. Very few people have had the opportunity to develop a coaching philosophy like I have. When you start coaching 15-year-old kids and end up coaching 35-year-old kids, you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about people. And, and I've always been very intense. I've always worked people extremely hard, but I'm always more on the positive side. And like a high school coach, my first assistant coach I ever had was named John Gilmore. His dad was a high school coach at Shasta High School in Northern California for 45 years. And one day he's watching us practice at Hillsdale High School, and I said, "What piece of advice would you give a young starting high school football coach?" He says, "Coach, You can't make a champion out of a guy you continually call a chump. Be positive.
Wow.
You know,
Whoa.
got it. That was 1960. Okay, here I am. How many years later? Haven't forgotten it. And all those little things become part of you, and you don't even know. So you have to stop and think where you first developed that thought, or was the person that stimulated that thought. So I'm very, very grateful. Right before we went online, I got a phone call from John Browning. Okay.
Okay.
John Browning was my starting defensive tackle for 5 years, Kansas City Chiefs, from 2001 to 2005. Okay. And we've maintained a great relationship. One reason, when I resigned, I talked to the squad. I'm going home, guys. I'm going on 70 years old. I'm going home. The meeting's all over. I'm sitting in the locker talking to guys, and John Browning comes up and he walks bare ass naked, walks across the locker room, leans over on the hands on his says, "Coach, just want you to know I love you."
Mm.
Startled me. John Browning didn't say a word to me in 5 years. So the next day we have a team meeting, Ken. The next day we have our team meeting. Meeting's over. I said, John, I got to talk to you. Come here, come over here. We said, I said, you made the statement to me. It still chokes me up. Why did you do that? You're not he said, Coach, you're the only coach that ever coached me that really cared about me.
Wow.
How fundamental. 20 minutes ago, he called me on the phone. 20 minutes ago. He's got back issues. I've got a cold. Okay. But anyway, all those things, sometimes you can't let them pass by. You've got to go evaluate. Why did John Browning say that? Why did it touch me so? And where did all that come from? So I'm very grateful. Very, very grateful. I live in a state of gratefulness.
Wow. Coach, I got a question for you. Just being a young coach, what prepared you to, be so mature and wise and being able to glean all this information and pay attention along the way? Because obviously all of us go through different coaches, and we're constantly, around people and seeing how they've done it and their experience they've experienced. But like the way you just went through all those coaches and you organized each thought of how they've impacted you, what was it back from growing up in your household that, you just learned to glean from other people, or where did you get that wisdom?
Well, it's a good question. Very tough to be specific, but it's an accumulation of your exposures. It's an accumulation, not any one of them, but put together in a proper perspective.
Yeah.
With great respect and admiration for those who passed that on to you. I could tell stories on every one of these guys we're talking about that impacted me, and I have never forgotten it. I've never erased it. Well, with the modern era, you can't coach like you used to, Maloney. I just got an email this morning, a good friend, who's a Naval Academy graduate, that I had him watch Dynasty, the Bill Belichick. Have you seen that, Ken?
Yes.
Yeah. To me, it's dynamic, and it's a little bit of anybody won't go there. But he said, geez, I don't think Belichick could coach a modern team today. I said, BS. If he had good management on top of him, he'd win more Super Bowls. You can't do it by yourself. If the players that's mad at you because you chewed them out and worked them too hard, or made them upset them in some way because of something you said, because you told them the truth, and he goes back the steps to the behind the building, the general manager, and complains, and the general manager says, listen, he's going to be here a lot longer than you are. Just do what you're supposed to do. We're going to win some football games. All of a sudden, he's successful again. But if he goes up the back steps and the general manager, the presidents agree with him, and they fire the coach. Okay. Look at what they're paying players today. Yeah.
I think there's
most important.
there's certain.
Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but if people trust you and they read you as sincere and honest, and they know that you as the leader are backed by an organization that supports your beliefs. I'm the only coach that coached 3 teams in the NFL has never gotten fired.
Wow.
because of the lesson I learned from Ralston. Make sure those people above you that really hired you are in tune with what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Wow.
I can remember telling John Shaw before the 1999 season, John, this is a good football team. This is good. This is going to be a playoff team. He said, don't tell me that. Everybody's told me that ever since I've been around. I said, I just had that feeling. Never could I predict we'd win a Super Bowl, but I knew because for 2 years we had worked those guys like I'd worked the Eagle guys. You can't do that anymore. It's all controlled by the players union today.
Right.
And anyway,
Coach, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, and as you know, part of what we're doing in our ministry here is working with coaches that go through sometimes tough times. Go back to the Eagles, if you don't mind. You go to the Super Bowl. I actually was at that Super Bowl, Coach, as a recruited high school player. LSU took me to that game, so I remember that Eagle Raider game.
yeah.
But talk about what happens that you go through that you feel like you get burned out, the process that was going through your heart and mind. I think your family was behind even saying, Coach, you need to step away.
Yeah.
Share your heart, Coach, with the listeners, some of the young coaches that are maybe going through these types of things. Would you share your heart with us there?
Well, Ken, I got so I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't turn it off. I'd lose a game in the middle of the night. I thought it was a bad dream. I really didn't lose a game. I did. When you're building a team, you're going to lose some, win some, lose more. But once you get them going, then the agony and defeat hurt a hell of a lot more than the thrill you got out of the win in relationship. I can remember beating Dallas for the first time. 4 years it took us to beat Dallas. 4 years. And we beat them, and I'm on the airplane. Carol's flying with me. And I'm all shook up about, geez, who we play next week. She said, just take the time to enjoy the win. And I got the loss hurt me so much. I'm still thinking on Wednesday in preparation for the next game what I should have done last week to maybe prevent the loss. And I was backing up in progression. I wasn't going forward. I was going backward, and it just started eating at me. And then I got so I'd blame myself for the loss. Geez, if I hadn't called that pass and was intercepted, if I'd have run the ball, it wouldn't have been intercepted. We'd have won the game. These kind of things. It just starts growing on you. I think today they have more psychological terms they use to define what, I didn't know what to say. I knew I had to take a break from coaching. I knew that. And I was sitting in the house in Bryn Mawr, and I said, Carol, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave coaching. I'm going to take a year off. But I don't know what to say. She says, well, just tell him you're burnt out. I had never thought about burnout. What the hell does that mean? Well, that's the term I use. Okay. Now, it became a classical word. In fact, I went into New York on the train one day and visited with the guy that wrote the book on burnout. I think his name was Freudenberger, if I remember right.
Really?
And I sat down with that guy for 2 hours or so, and I actually, in my mind, I'm thinking, I think this guy's talked to Carol. He knew me. Never met me. He had never met me, but he described me perfectly. I'll tell you what I walked in the house after getting off the train, walked in the house. Carol said to me, how long do you think it'll take you to straighten him out? That was how I was evaluated. But anyway, then I go into broadcasting. In the old days, I was making $75,000 a year as head coach. Okay. And I had 3 kids in college. Okay. Tough. And then I go to $150,000 a year broadcasting again. And you're the expert. Weekends. It was amazing. And I saw so many fine football coaches. The best football coach maybe I ever watched, there are 2 of them. Tom Coughlin, great football coach. Old school guy. Bill Snyder, Kansas State.
Yes.
You'd go to his practice, Ken, you couldn't tell which team was a scout team. Getting prepared to play. And he'd take kids and he'd compete successfully against the Nebraskas and all these other teams that were far superior physically. But overall structure of the football team, those 2 guys could really coach. really coach. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I loved the assignment to go present their games because I'd study their film. I'd go and I'd study their practice sessions. I'd sit in the locker room and talk with these guys, the players, and uh, yeah, great, great football coaches. And there are two guys who were in college. I saw Tom Coughlin at Boston College, Bill Snyder at Kansas State. NFL coaches, you walk on the field, watch Don Shula coach a football team. That's General Eisenhower. That's General MacArthur. You should have seen him run a 2-minute drill. It was unbelievable. And I said how inferior I was to what I saw Don Shula doing. You know, and later I got to spend 18 days with him on a cruise across the Atlantic. He was a spokesperson for Crystal Cruise Lines, and he invited Carol and I to spend the trip with him. Oh my God, sitting talking with him, amazing. That's why he's the only undefeated head football coach in football. Okay. Yeah.
So you come out of broadcasting, you get the call to go back to the Rams. And I guess the question, Austin, you wanted to ask Coach about as he goes back to the Rams.
Well, you know.
What made you go back and then and think you could do it differently a second time?
Well, I'd had all but 1 year. I was out 14. All but 1 year, I had an NFL team approach me about going back, and the Rams approached me every time the job was open because I knew the ownership. I had worked for them as a young assistant, and Carol Rosenblum bought the team, I think, in '72, and I was there. And when he fired Prothro, he was married to Georgia, and he said, young man, I want you to stay on the staff here and work for my next coach. If you were older and more mature, I'd make you my head coach. That's what he said to me. So each time that job became open, I would get a call asking me if I was interested in that coaching job.
Yeah.
And finally, in '97, I get that call, and I'm getting to an age, if I don't go back now, it'll be too late. Plus, I knew they were sincere.
Yeah.
And they knew me, and they had an experienced people all through the building. I knew, Ken, first off, I knew I couldn't be what I was. I used to run my own offense, call my own plays, coach my own quarterbacks. And when I brought Sid Gilman in, I really brought Sid Gilman in '79 to coach me and my offensive coaching. And but anyway, I knew I couldn't do that. So I hired an experienced. We were the oldest staff in football. Everyone joked about us.
Yeah.
But we went to work in the old-fashioned way. Double days, full pads, 2 hours and 45 minutes, full pads, practice sessions. And there was a lot of bitching, a lot of moaning, and a lot of losing. The team that suited up 3 years later, that suited up in the Super Bowl and won, there were 9 guys on the field that were under contract when we took it over 3 years earlier.
Wow.
And they had won 9 games prior to the start of that season. But I knew you could watch them fundamentally get better.
Yeah.
And we were getting to our fundamentals and techniques quicker than our opponents. But we weren't making many plays. But when you add Torrey Holt in a draft, you had Mike Martz as offensive coordinator, who's brilliant, and you let him coach, and you provided him with a foundation of structure, fundamental soundness, a great practice routine, and a disciplined group of players. You had a chance, and I had a great coaching staff, just a great coaching staff, and I didn't run my own offense. I didn't run my own offense, and I couldn't. I was too far removed. Plus, I was also had to learn how to be the head coach of the day and all salary cap. Our highest paid player, I think, it was like $400,000 at one time with the Eagles. Come on,
Things have changed.
I knew if I could provide him a fundamental approach. I could work very hard at presenting a player to the coaches in the frame of mind to be coached.
Wow,
that's so critical. In the frame of mind, coached, positive and sometimes negatively. And I think I used to go to a different position meeting every night, and all through training camp. And training camps were a lot different than they are today. A lot different. Yeah. Today it looks like Dancing with the Stars. It's probably, I know this now because I started in the league in '69. It's better for the players up here, and they had the CTE issues. They exist. Not for everybody, but they do for some players. And I saw that the less time in full pads, the less contact and all that is better for them physically. So I'm all for it. But it does interfere with true coaching of the game to make them better. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, Ken, football is not a contact sport. It's a combat sport. You think the offense center against the 200, 300-pound nose guards in contact? No, they're combat. Yeah.
That's right.
It's combat. Yeah. For how many snaps a game? Yeah. How many?
70, 80 snaps a game.
So anyway, I don't know where I am, but I learned a lot in that team. Then you trade, get Marshall Falk.
That's a pretty good pickup.
We worked maybe 2 months on getting Marshall Falk. You know who's the head coach in Indianapolis at that time? Jim Mora. Jim Mora and I coached together at Stanford. So finally, we moved the administration out of it, and we talked man to man, as you and I can, as old friends. Okay,
Yes.
All of a sudden it gets done. All of a sudden, I'm a much better offensive coach. I had Marshall. He's amazing. They talk about these guys today. Marshall was amazing. He had no limitation with the ball in his hand. Any way you could put it in his hand, just do it. But anyway, the talent level. There's 4 guys off that offensive line of scrimmage right now that are already in the Hall of Fame. Torrey Holt will be the 5th, and he's been in the finals like 5 years in a row. So you just stop and think. And then Azakim and Ricky Pearl are backup receivers making plays. If it wasn't for Ricky Pearl catching the ball on top of his head in the NFC Championship game, we don't go to the Super Bowl.
Against the Buccaneers, right?
Yeah, against the Buccaneers. But anyway, very fortunate. And I've been very, very fortunate. And Ken, I think you were coaching Illinois when I first met you, right?
No, I met you in '92. I was in the World League in Orlando.
Oh, that's right.
You were broadcasting. That's when we first met.
Orlando. The head coach was
Galen Hall.
Galen Hall, and the line coaches. Maybe I got it mixed up. One of them's now Joe D'Alessandro's.
Joe coached with me at Pittsburgh. He and our best friends.
Yeah, he's at
Baltimore.
I stayed in touch.
And then obviously Al Saunders and I have been friends since 1990, and obviously I know how you and Al are very close. So.
Very close. Very. See, I brought him to the Rams that same year.
Yes.
So I used to tell people I got about 5 first-round picks in '99. So I had Marshall Falk. I had Marshall Falk, Al Saunders, Mike Martz, these kind of guys, John Matsko. My God, you talk about upgrade a team that's prepared to win. If we hadn't had a foundation, if we hadn't built that foundation, the fundamental basis of the whole program, the structure, the discipline, we wouldn't have won it in '99. But I'll tell you this, the 5th game of the season that year, Ken, we're playing the 49ers in St. Louis. 49ers had beaten the Rams 17 times in a row. You almost have to forfeit games to lose 17 times in a row. and they used the same old Rams. So all of a sudden, we're ahead 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. And the 49ers had been in the playoffs the year before. Okay. And we'd beaten Atlanta, who'd been in the Super Bowl the week before.
Yeah.
So we finished the game. We blow them out. Bill Walsh is running the 49ers. He comes in my press conference. Okay. Now we're old friends. He walks in my press conference, takes over my podium, and says, "This team's going to win the world championship." Oh, my God. But anyway,
Thank you, Bill.
That Monday. So that was Sunday. The next day, I go into the meeting room. I always started Monday meetings with me talking to the team. Then they break up. I said, "Guys, there's only one team in the National Football League that can beat this football team. Fortunately for us, they're all in this room." I said, I don't want to hear one person repeat what I just said to you. But no one ever betrayed that statement that I made. No one ever said another word about it. But
that's why you won it all. Yeah.
But I just wanted them to know how really good they are.
Well, it's like you said, Coach. You said, like in the Bible, it talks about speaking life or death. and you're speaking life into them, into existence, and you're giving them the vision and the hope, not to go tell everybody and brag about it, but you are helping them see what you saw, and then they walked into what they had.
Yeah, no question. It's a good analogy. Yeah, and sometimes you could think that doesn't happen. We've all done that, but I just had an unbelievable impulsive feeling. I didn't organize that thought when I went into that meeting. It just all of a sudden came out when I felt the vibrations in the room. I'd never walked in a room that was more excited at what they had just accomplished than walking in that room. Yeah. And Ken,
Coach,
I'm sure you experience things like that. Yeah.
that definitely was an amazing team that you had. And one of the things Austin and I wanted to ask you, because we're all three quarterbacks or former quarterbacks sitting here, tell us a little bit about how you'd compare, and I think I pronounced his name correctly. You had John Shiara at UCLA.
John Shira, yeah.
Shira. You had Ron Jaworski with the Eagles. You had Trent Green, a little bit with the Rams, but then you got him back with the Chiefs, and you have Kurt Warner. What did those four quarterbacks, what were some of the qualities they had that you saw in them that were championship quarterbacks?
Good question, Ken. I've often been asked that, and I can't give you great definition. I've always thought if I had one talent that was maybe on the plus side over somebody else, was that I always could sense who the quarterback should be. In my junior college year, quarterback, high school, he was all conference. Junior college, he was all conference. Okay. Walt Raymond. Shire was all American. Okay. Jaworski became all pro. Trent Green played in the Pro Bowl after injuries. Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. I just had a feeling of watching them and listening to them and viewing them as people in a combination of attributes. And I just felt, he's my guy. Yeah, and with Kurt Warner, I brought him to Kurt Warner because Al Legenbuhl called and asked us if we'd sign him because he wanted to take him to Europe to be his quarterback in the old NFL year. And if we signed him, then we could assign him to play in Germany. So I said, sure, I really believe in that league. Sure, we'll do that. And never do that. His first year with us, he was our third quarterback. And what advantage of not coaching a side of the ball yourself is as a head coach on the field, you're watching everything. And I'm standing in the secondary daily of watching Kurt Warner run the opponent's offense against our defense. And the ball never touches the ground. And the defensive players are getting mad at him because on the cards, they circled where they wanted to go to, and he didn't throw it there. He went over there because he was open over there,
Right.
So I would walk off the field, I'd say to myself, either our defense stinks or this kid can play. I'd say that. Yeah. We made him our second quarterback. Okay, and we brought in Trent Green. And Trent Green had been in the league a number of years and only played 1 year. Yeah. And because of the quarterback got hurt. But Norv Turner's a great football coach. I had great admiration and respect for him. He had coached him. And there were things that John Becker really liked about him. And then John kept showing it to me, and I liked him. So we signed him as a free agent. And, of course, he plays in 3 preseason games. By the time he gets hurt in the first half of the third preseason game, he's throwing 27 complete of 31 attempts. He's really playing, man. The practice field, he's lights out. So I know we got a kid that can play. And Mike Martz is doing a beautiful job with him. And so then he goes down and we go with Kurt. And I always thought he could play. I didn't know he could play as well as he could. And I think, first off, they're intelligent kids. They have the mental intelligence to understand everything going on. And it happens quickly to them. Yeah, I mean, they see things as you would love for them to see. Some people are almost blind. They see everything going on blur. Those guys see it and do it, and of course they got to be coached. The scheme's got to fit. And but I was lucky, fortunate, and also bragging, saying I never had a kid at that position who couldn't play at any level. So something helped me inside me say he's my guy. And
Yeah.
they were always backed by deep character. I brought Shira, okay, and made him a safety with the Eagles.
Yes.
If you saw me inducted into the Hall of Fame, you saw who took the cover off the bust. It was John Shira. Okay.
Yes.
If the gold jacket dinner the night before, all three of my starting quarterbacks were on the stage with me when they put the gold jacket on me. Why? Because they were the ones responsible, not me. Crime sakes. So I got to show my respect and appreciation at the same time. When I said I was going to do that, God love the Hall of Fame people, wonderful people. Jim Porter said, no one's ever done that before. He says, well, it's time. It's time. They didn't know if the networks would want it. Anyway.
Austin, before we get to family, I know you have something you want to say to Coach probably about Kurt Warner when he talked about Kurt, because you were a little kid. So why don't you share that with Coach?
Okay, so I'm 8 or 9 years old, and my dad's the offensive coordinator for the Rhine Fire in NFL Europe, and my dad's team was good. They were like 7-0 or maybe 7-1. They just lost the Barcelona Dragons, and were going to Amsterdam, play the Amsterdam Admirals, and we're playing there. And I'm all pumped up about my dad's team and all that stuff, and they're winning the game. And this guy for the Admirals is going up and down the field towards the end of the game, and they're about like on the 8 or 9 yard line, and he breaks the pocket and gets in the end zone right at the end of the game to win the game. And I'm sitting on the bus, and waiting for everybody to get on the bus to drive back to Dusseldorf, Germany. And I can remember that quarterback walking out towards his locker room, and as a little 8-year-old, I said, "I hate you, Kurt Warner." And then you find out 2 or 3 years later he's winning the Super Bowl for you and the Rams, and I'm like, I learned to respect him, but at that time it was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I understand those emotions, believe me. Yeah, he's a special guy.
Oh, unbelievable.
There's not a phony bone in his body.
Mm.
No, he's back. The movie was a good movie. There was some, they probably emphasized different things in the American Underdog movie.
Yes.
But, he's especially, and his son was here at Temple.
Okay.
Oh, was he?
Temple, and he transferred to SMU.
Okay.
And he's still a little player. He could throw the ball.
Yeah.
He could throw the football. He was the leading passer here by far. And now he's at SMU competing to play there for the next 2 years. Yeah.
Coach,
Okay.
I want to talk about family a little bit. And I think one of the most impressive things as I did my homework on you and your life is on you and your wife's relationship. 60+ years of marriage in this
68.
profession, 68 years. That is a special thing that a couple has. And I just like you to share with our listeners, how did you meet your wife? What makes her special? And I guess, how did she make you a better coach?
Well, first we met in high school. Okay, she came to Calistoga with her father, her stepfather, in her freshman year in high school, and I was already there. So that's where we met, and we went what you went study in high school from my sophomore year on, and we got married when we were 19. Okay, and we have 3 children. They're 66, 64, and 62. Okay, we have 11 grandchildren, 8 grandsons, and 4 great granddaughters. But I think really, in the old days when people got married, it was a commitment they totally understood a little better than they do today.
Sure.
Yeah, like my father. We didn't have. My dad gave me a $50 bill the day I got married, and Gene Frediani of Frediani Vineyards gave me a $50 bill. That's what the money I had. Carol had been working. She had $1,500 in the bank, so I married her for her money. And we went to San Jose State. She transferred working for AT&T to San Jose until our first child was born a couple of years later. But anyway, I think the big thing, she was always included in my job.
Mm.
She's probably at our house over our dinner table 80 to 90% of the kids we ever coached. Yeah, in our house. And that gave her a better feeling
Yeah.
for the kids. You know, and I have friends at the Hall of Fame this year. I had many friends that I couldn't. They never understood how close Carol was to all those kids. Mrs. V, they grab her and she, little gal, hold her and swing her around, and they didn't realize that how close she was to all those kids.
Mm.
And so I always made her, and she did it. Uh, it was just, yeah, she enjoyed getting to know the kids, and later know the kids and the players' wives. In the off season, like the Chiefs for 5 years, we'd have all offensive linemen and wives on Thursday night next week, and then especially during the summer camp times when they're all in town, and we'd go through the whole roster, and we'd do the cooking ourselves. And it's amazing what you find out about kids around a dinner table you don't find out in a meeting room.
That's right.
It's amazing.
Coach, I know you'll appreciate this. I think that's what we've lost in our society is the dinner table.
Yeah. I don't know how many families sit at the dinner table anymore.
That's right. Yeah. All the important conversations that happen around the table.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I tell you, when I was a kid growing up, my dad would walk in, wash his hands, get the grease off him, come and sit down. Nobody could eat until he got in. Sometimes we're waiting at the table at 7 o'clock. We've been sitting there for an hour. Waiting for him. And then finally, mother would say, all right, we'll eat. Okay. And she would feed him after we've all eaten, but that was later in life, But I think the big thing is Carol was always deeply involved. She lived and died with every game, and I can still remember with the day you go to training camp and looking back, and there she is crying because she knows it's going to be a long year. It's going to be a long 6 months. Training camp at the end of the season, that she's raising the kids. So I think that's more or less, but I think it also starts with the thinking in our society at that. My dad said to me, no Vermeil has ever been divorced. So when you make this commitment, it's for life. I mean, he was one, like I said, you could never misunderstand him. Never. And sometimes he didn't like what he said, but you understood it. Okay.
Yeah. That was pretty clear.
Yeah. Pretty clear. I think the big thing is she was involved because she knew all the kids. When I took over the chief job, Carol was the first lady to ever be on the practice field. She'd come once a week to practice and sit in the stands and watch practice. And then pretty quick, it got to be all the assistant coaches' wives would come and sit in the stands and watch practice. And then when the practice is over, they'd all move over and visit with the coaches' wives, the players, as they walk off. Especially the Dante Halls and the Eddie Kennisons and the Will Shields and all these kind of guys. Trent Green and that. Some of those guys have been in this house in Pennsylvania. Okay, so and Trent Green and Todd Collins are limited partners in my little wine business. Okay, but anyway. It's accumulation of life. No, you coach long enough to know exactly what I'm saying, Ken.
Yes. Well, you were building community.
Pardon?
I said you built community.
Yeah. And now the word is everyone's using the word culture. I get tired of hearing it. It used to be esprit de corps. The team had great spirit. Well, they had this, they had that. Well, if you do things correctly, it happens.
That's right.
In those days when it was happening, you didn't define it as it's happening. It just did because of your process, And
Coach, we know a big moment in your life was the Hall of Fame announcement. And could you just share with us what was going through your heart and mind when I guess you first knew you were nominated, but then you see Kurt Warner, everyone's watched it on TV, he's walking up to your door to tell you, and then when you're in Canton standing up there making your speech, what was going through your heart and mind?
I was overwhelmed, way beyond my expectation. I can name 6 guys right now that I'll feel a lot better when they're on the Hall of Fame because I consider all those guys better football coaches than me. Okay, starting with Tom. How about Marty Schottenheimer? How about Dan Reeves? How about Dan? These guys? Mike Shanahan. My God, these guys are great football coaches. But anyway, I didn't have a vote. I had nothing to do with getting it in. People voted for me. I got in. And I'm a big advocate of getting more coaches in before they die. Putting a coach in posthumously waste of time. Get them in now, even if you have to put 2 or 3 in, because those guys are getting older.
Yes.
They're getting
Yeah.
older. But it was overwhelming, and a great feeling of humbleness. It's almost, when it's not expected. I'd been nominated a number of times, but I never put myself in that category. I was always a little bit in awe of what I consider being a great football coach. The Joe Gibbses, and Marty Schottenheimer's a great football coach. Never won a Super Bowl. Okay, so he's not a great. Just look at his win-loss record. Look at how many games he. Dan Reed's been to 2 Super Bowls. Okay, 2 different teams. These kind of guys, over 200 wins. Yeah, Mike Shanahan and God, what's his name? From Green Bay Packers, Seattle. It takes them both to the Super Bowl. Mike does. But hopefully, I will feel better when they get in. I mean that sincerely. But I was overwhelmed by it. Overwhelmed and very grateful. Very, very grateful, because I never played a snap. And I'd like to believe I made a contribution to all those things. But I'm very fortunate, and I always respected people I had coaching with me. I had very, very few coaching problems. Very, very few. And I knew some coaches were better than others. But if they were good people, it didn't bother me. You don't need too many geniuses. Yeah, you can have too many. What are you going to do? Run. You spend all the time with your great thoughts and not getting it done. But, no, to me, it was overwhelming. I first got the word. I'm walking through the airport in San Francisco when I got the phone call. It's official. You're going in. And then Kurt Warner shows up at our house here. My God. Yeah. I didn't know that. But anyway, it's unbelievable. Okay, unbelievable. Never did I think that would happen. Yeah, but that doesn't decrease the how much I appreciate the contribution of all the people that voted. Because, like I said, I didn't cast a vote. We don't have a vote, and there's only 29 of us in there, and over half of them have already passed away. Okay, we've got my suggestion each year at the hall is to put more than one coach in. Otherwise, we're going to be putting more guys in posthumously, and it's not fair. We know they're Hall of Famers. You can put 7 football players in, but only one coach. When I went in, I was the 28th coach in years. And anyway.
Well, definitely a great honor, and
great honor.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to do this podcast with my son, Austin. For the last 10 years, Austin and I have had many intimate conversations on his drive home from work. Some of these father-son conversations have been lighthearted, while others have been very deep and emotional. Over the Christmas holidays, we decided to start a podcast called Awaken Kingdom Culture, where we invite our friends to share their life-changing stories with you, our listeners. This podcast is done under our nonprofit, The Win Awakening, a sports ministry network for coaches, athletes, and those who lead. Our vision is to awaken hearts and minds, one story at a time. Our mission is to encourage coaches and athletes and those who lead to live from a place of victory, regardless of success, records, or the scoreboard. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. Right in the middle of your mess, I'm reminded daily that the most important person of my day is the one in front of me, and that one matters, and that you are the one. WinAwakening.org is our website. I encourage you to visit our website, where you can encounter the good news of who you are in Christ and what you already possess and how to live from it. There you'll find blogs, videos, Andrew's journal, and this podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. I'm thankful for all of you who have given and are a member of Team Win. Awaken Kingdom Culture is listener supported. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to winawakening.org. We are a nonprofit. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And please like, share, and write a review on Spotify or YouTube. Okay, it's time to get back to the podcast. Well, Coach, we're going to end this over the next few minutes here with a few more questions. We're going to talk legacy. I think about my wife, who I've been married to for 37 years. She'd remind me many days walking out of the door, she'd say, just remember that coaching is a high calling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I see in your life. And so looking back, knowing what you know now, would have you done anything differently in your career or personal life?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's a number of things. There are a couple of things that grind on me a little bit now. See, Ken, I always believed, especially in the NFL, that the normal player in the NFL, the average player, always felt the superstar who got paid more and more publicity and more acknowledgments for the team's success than they did, always were a little bit resentful of those guys. And they always felt, this is a personal thing, they always felt that if I made a mistake as an average player, I'd get my butt chewed out by the coaches. But if you were a superstar, you'd go in a little private meeting room and say, young man, you made a mistake. So I always made up my mind when something was really glaring that a good player screwed up on, I'd address it in a team reading room. And I did it a few times, probably too much, because what happens with me, and I get really pissed off. And I would go back and probably temper what I said today, because there's no way those people probably care about Dick Vermeil right now. But I'll tell you this, maybe it gained a little deeper respect throughout the whole organization, because they know we're all on the same page. We're all playing for the same team. We're all being coached the same way, regardless of how much money you're making. So there are a couple of those things I probably would do differently. I probably would have listened to coaches, especially assistants, Lynn Stiles and these guys in the 80s, Sid Gilman saying, Dick, you can't keep going like you're going. It's going to catch up with you. Not me. I'd got to sleeping in my office. I'd go to bed at 3 and get up at 5. It's 2 hours sleeping. It was stupid. But the compulsiveness within my own personality, I think, dictated that. I don't know. But I would listen to him. And probably been a better coach if I didn't. But I also felt that I had to make all the decisions offensively because I was calling my own plays. And that was wrong. I learned that when I became a head coach and I didn't coach my own offense. I'd make contributions, but the biggest contribution I could make was put that player in that meeting room in the frame of mind to be coached. And then present the structure in the practice field, the discipline within the organization was every bit as important as the play I called on the goal line. So those kind of things I think I would listen to, but I don't believe in regrets.
Good.
I know I've made many mistakes, but you mentioned Super Bowl 15 we got beat in. I made some mistakes in the game plan there. Two of my 3 top receivers couldn't play in the game. Charlie Smith had broken his jaw in the playoff game 2 weeks ahead of the game before the Super Bowl. So we let him suit up and take the first snap in the game. And then Scott Fitzke had a stress fracture in his leg. So I have Harold Carmichael, and I have a kid, free agent. In fact, I think he ended up catching a touchdown in there. And I didn't have that confidence in that receiver core now that I had going into the game. So I used Wilbert Montgomery a lot out as a wide receiver in what I call the deuce set. Okay. And he was the leading receiver in the game because he could play. But when I did that, I no longer had him running the ball in the backfield. So my running game wasn't as good. So I would second guess that today, and I learned, give the backup player credit for being good enough to do what you've been doing.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes you underestimate them. Good thing I didn't do that with Kurt Warner.
Well said. Well said.
So, Coach, overall, your experiences, what wisdom would you have for a younger coach that's in the next generations?
Well, I always say, number one, be who you are.
Hmm.
Be who you are, and then allow who you aren't to be improved by those you respect and admire. And,
Wow.
and look for ways to gain strength. One of my great coaches was a Monsignor. I'm not Catholic, but he was the team chaplain for 7 years here. He's the only Monsignor that could take his busy work day off and travel with the team on Sunday. That's Monsignor Sharkey. Hell, he parachuted in Germany with the paratroopers. Okay, this guy was a man's man. And I learned a lot from him too, because we would have dinner the night before the team meetings. You remember those, Ken?
Yes.
Saturday night, I'd have dinner with him and listen to him talk, both spiritually and fundamentally. You know, I remember him one time. A player came off the field and was giving a statement about it was God's will and all this kind of stuff. And Monsignor Sharkey pulled him over. He says, "Listen, young man, God does not choose what side of the line of scrimmage he prays for." He says, "Your responsibility." He's looking after all of us. It's your responsibility. That happened during the game. You know, we all learn something from those kind of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Coach, with all that you've accomplished, what do you value and treasure the most?
My family, yeah,
Hmm.
they're all Hall of Famers to me. Yeah, they're all different. I have great daughter-in-laws, just unbelievable daughter-in-laws. I have great grandsons. One of them lives here because he's out here all the time. He likes to hunt, fish, and everything. And they're just those. And now I've got 4 little. Our daughter had 4 sons. Now she has 4 granddaughters. So, those are most precious to me, and I love how much they got to enjoy what I did for a living. Every
Wow.
grandson, 7 out of the 8 grandsons spent time in our training camp. One of them, the oldest one, or second oldest one, went to every training camp from the Rams on. From the Rams on, not the Eagles. From the Rams, we're there. Now we'd give them jobs; they'd work. One guy filmed all the pre-practice stuff for special teams. So they were always involved, and some of them still communicate with some of the players they were close to. So, but I would say number one is the family. Yeah, here I am going on 88 years old. I'm still deeply involved with my family.
Yes.
Yeah.
My football team is not around. I hear from a lot of guys all the time. Okay, all the time. And a lot of it I stimulate myself because I need their reinforcement. I need to know they're still thinking about what we did together.
Coach, what was what was the most significant moment in your coaching career that you look back and just probably your fondest memory?
I would say if I had to go to one at the end of the game in the Rose Bowl, seeing Woody Hayes walk across the field before the game's over. We've got the ball, timeout over here with about a minute to go in the game. And he walks across the field and gives me a hug and says, "Nice job of coaching, young man." That's what he said. To have that, I'll never forget it. And they had beaten us 21-41, I think, something like that, in the regular season. Then we upset them in the Rose Bowl. And I think that for some reason because at that time, Ken, I had great coaches. I had Rod Dowhauer and Terry Donahue, Dick Tomey, all these guys. I had a lot of great coaches with me. But I still called my own plays. And you feel more deeply involved when you call your own plays, that kind of stuff. But when seeing him walk across the field and say that to me, I will never forget it.
Coach, with all the relationships that you have made in this profession, we've rattled them off today, coaches, players, fans, sports announcers, a Monsignor. How do you want to be remembered, Coach?
Oh, I think number one is that I cared.
Mm.
I always said, I don't coach football. I coach people that play football. Coach
Yes.
people that play football. I learned that through high school coaching football and swimming. And then from then on, I kept adding to it. I realized you're coaching people to do something you'd like to see them do better. And you gradually learn by making your own mistakes. And I'd say that would be the thing. Number one, that I cared. Yeah. Win or lose, I cared about it.
Wow.
Well, the last thing we do, Coach, is we do something called final words.
Mhm.
And I want to give you an opportunity if there's anything on your heart you'd want to share with those that will be listening. And then Austin will share a final word to you, and I will close it up.
Well, I'd say never be embarrassed to say I love you. It doesn't have to be the same kind of love you have for your own immediate family, but it's a much deeper term than say I respect you or I like you or I care about you. There are certain people that go beyond that. I've got a lot of them in my career. That's why I've been halfway successful. I got a lot of those in my career. It's not the same as saying I love you to my wife or to my kids, but it's right there. It's right there. And you've mentioned many of those names. And I very seldom get a phone call from a player that at the end of the statement he doesn't say I love you, coach.
Wow.
Don't be afraid.
Well, Coach, I'm just so blessed that you took the time to come and share your story. I know for me, there's so much to glean. I'm going to have to watch back over this and there's so much wisdom and, things that you focused on people, like you said, which, that's really what the heart of a coach is. And the ability to take someone from where they are to help them be what they want to accomplish. And,
Yeah,
I
well,
go
a
ahead.
lot of people have been raised today. Excuse me for interrupting. I've got to say, a lot of people are raised today, well, without anybody letting them know what they might be able to be.
Mm, yeah.
I can't tell you how many kids I coached who didn't know who their father was.
Yeah.
They didn't have a dad in their house every day, good or bad, negative, positive, whatever it was. But they lack the structure.
Absolutely. And Coach, I'm convinced. If you want to go back for a fourth trip in the NFL, you could run a championship organization right now. You just, just the way you talk about how you structure your organization to, how you manage people, it's just, there's no secret to why you've been successful. And,
Well, thank you.
I'm just glad you took the
Thank
time
you.
to share it because, there's so many coaches out there that we're in it for the wrong reasons a lot of times. We're in it for our own self and our own name and our own glory. And, you miss out on the fruits of what a coach is really about. And I'm just thankful that you walk this out and you live this, your life and you coach the way you did, Coach.
Thank you. Well, you had a good coach sitting right next to you. He was a good football coach. I know that. Okay, I know what he was a good football coach. He could coach for me at any time. Probably do a better job than I did. Okay, so no, but I appreciate the opportunity to share thoughts. I don't get many opportunities. I used to do a lot of speaking, which I enjoy. I like to talk to corporations. You find out the problems they have in these major corporations all stem from people. The people create their own problems. So I
You're right.
enjoy that. I don't get many opportunities anymore, but
Well,
I
Coach,
enjoy being able to do this and share these thoughts. So thank you for inviting me.
well, Coach, we say thank you too. And as I started this ministry to coaches last in 2022, at the end of 36 years of coaching, you were one of the two men that I thought of that fit what we're talking about with these coaches, and that is helping them be what I call kingdom coaches. They see the bigger picture. I've never had the chance to work for you or with you, but I've watched you from a distance everywhere I've ever been. And I just want you to know, because my son knows this, you have impacted my life in ways you'll never know.
Oh,
And
you.
I just thank you very much for being here. I love you. The word you've shared multiple times is you are grateful. And there's not many coaches that would say that. So, Austin and I just want to thank you for allowing us to share your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.
Thank you. Thank you both. Good luck to
Thank
you.
you.